Of the games with a supposed release date in 2023, Starfield is without a doubt the biggest and most ambitious of them all. In this video, I'll explore everything we can look forward to in Bethesda's 25 years in the making action role-playing game. From its massive storyline to the crazy amount of customization options it offers, this title could very well change the gaming industry forever, or fail miserably to live up to the expectations. By the end of the video, I'll cover why this risks being a massive waste of money, so stick around to know more. Without further ado, let's jump into the world of Starfield. The game will take us into the year 2330, an age where humanity has colonized a large section of the Milky Way, extending 50 light-years beyond Earth and forming a union of planets that is known as the Settled Systems. 20 years prior to the beginning of our story, the Settled Systems were ravaged by a conflict between two of its main factions, the Freestar Collective and the United Colonies, which was quite simply called the Colony War. Although the fighting has stopped when our journey begins, we know it left the political forces that govern the Settled Systems in an uneasy peace. In this scenario, our character is contacted by a neutral faction, known only as Constellation, whose purpose appear to be interstellar exploration and research, without being bogged down by the politics of the Settled Systems. The specific reasons why our character is chosen remain unknown, but Bethesda's gameplay reveal seemed to suggest that we are some sort of a space miner who came into contact with a mysterious artifact. Just digging it up was enough for us to get weird visions that might have something to do with yet-to-be-discovered corners of the universe. Since apparently there are several of these relics scattered about, we are asked to join Constellation and help them collect as many as we possibly can, before other factions, both human and otherwise, might decide to do the same. As we travel to discover more of what lies beneath the surface, the entire fate of the Settled Systems, or perhaps even of the entire universe, will hang in the balance. How the narrative will unfold remains to be seen, but Starfield's game director Todd Howard has given an estimate of between 30 to 40 hours to complete the main story, and that is by ignoring every side content that will for sure be present. Whether or not we'll participate in any side activity is for us to decide, but no matter how we may approach the game, it all starts with deciding who we want to be. A core feature of many open-world RPGs, Starfield's character creator is going to be capable of satisfying even the most hardcore of detail lovers. Alongside the typical sliders for body type, height, weight, skin tone, and so on, we'll be able to pick less basic features like the walking style, which is definitely an interesting option for all players that want to experience the game in the third person. Should we have an identity crisis midway through our adventures, however, we'll be able to redo the entire process by visiting places called genetics facilities, giving us plenty of room to experiment when creating our character. Once we have chosen all physical features, the next step is to select a background. All information we have so far points to backgrounds being similar to character classes in other RPGs. Each background will give us 3 abilities to work with, and there seems to be around 20 to pick from. The abilities these backgrounds provide are pretty basic, from a passive 10% increase to the damage of certain weapons, to additional carrying capacity or extra base health. It certainly is nothing new for us gamers. The juicy stuff will be tied to the skill tree as we level up, which I'll go over in a minute. Once we're okay with our background choice, we are presented with optional traits that we can select to further customize our character. These traits seem to be tied to things like personality, weird alien blood in our veins, or affiliation to certain religions. In some cases, selecting one of these traits prevents us from taking its direct opposite, but it appears we are able to select a total of 3 from the presented list. This feature also gives us some insight regarding the philosophical or religious groups present within the game's society, which seem to be the Enlightened and the Sanctum Universum. All we know for now is that there will be vendors associated with each of these 2 groups, Belonging to one gives us discounts with its vendors, but at the same time completely prevents us from purchasing goods from the opposing one. It is unclear whether we can modify this decision in-game, and what kind of goods each vendor sells, but I am sure we'll get more details in the future. Other than its creation process, our character will be defined by the abilities we'll develop as we collect the precious experience from killing stuff, exploring the world, and completing quests. So let's talk about that next. Starfield gives us 3 different ways to increase our character's performance: skill trees, skill ranks, and project research. As we level up, we can spend points into 5 different skill trees, which are physical, social, combat, science, and tech. It looks like each tree gives us roughly 16 skills, but it is unclear how many of them we can unlock at the same time. Once we have obtained a skill, we can start to level up its ranks, which is generally achieved by using the skill as many times as possible. Ranks increase the benefits we gain from having a skill unlocked. Once again, gamers will recognize many attributes typical of the RPG genre. Skills we gotta look at include reloading faster, dealing more damage, aiming easier with precise weapons, and many other tasty buffs that become available as we go further down the tree. In addition to these systems, we can use specific research labs to study new technology, creating equipment from a variety of different projects. Bethesda did not bless us with the knowledge as to how we'll get these projects, but if I were to guess, I'd say we can probably get them either via vendors, monster loot, quest rewards, or quite possibly all 3 of the above. Judging from gameplay footage, these projects are divided into 5 different categories named pharmacology, food and drink, outpost development, equipment, and weaponry. Collecting the many resources available through space travel is key in experimenting with this project, so we better make sure to scavenge every corner of the galaxy in order to get our grabby hands on rare ores and forbidden knowledge we can use to further our progress. However, jumping from planet to planet is no easy feat. With the vastness of space at our disposal, Starfield promises a never-before-seen amount of stars, moons, and everything in between that only awaits to be explored. Being the most important part of any game set in space, exploring as much of the galaxy as possible is usually where things get interesting. First, it is important to know that pretty much all different activities in this game can be done with a third-person action camera or a first-person view, with the exception of dialogues that are only tied to first-person. Swapping between the two can easily be done at any moment during gameplay, so we get the chance to travel through space as we prefer. According to what Bethesda has told us, Starfield features over 100 different star systems, with a total of over 1,000 planets and moons that are readily available for us to explore, which sounds just crazy. But before we get our hopes too high, let's immediately look at the elephant in the room. Spaceflight is not freeform, and we won't be able to pilot our spacecraft wherever we might want to. We are allowed to fly freely around some orbits, and of course we can shoot at enemy ships when in space. But traveling between different planets or manually landing on one is not possible. Although this is probably something we should have expected given the scope of this game, I would be a liar if I didn't say that I had hoped for a bit more. But it is what it is. Once we have chosen a landing point, a pre-made animation will bring us to the planet's surface. Instead of manually flying around, a huge part of space travel is handled via maps visually represented by an in-game menu. These maps give us access to all sorts of information regarding the system we're in, easily allowing us to see stats like the general difficulty of the enemies we encounter, how much we have explored it, whether it is inhabited by plants or creatures, what kind of resources we might find, and so on. Upon touching ground, things get a little more satisfying in terms of freedom to explore around. Maps are filled with useful materials that can be collected through the use of many tools at our disposal, providing what we need for the research and crafting of awesome technologies. Should we prefer more civilized environments, access to outposts and cities is certainly an option. The main one we got a big preview of is New Atlantis, which is the capital of the United Colonies, and will be the largest city ever created by Bethesda Studios in any game. Considering that there seem to be 3 other major cities alongside the capital, this is once more an example of just how big this game aims to be. We also know that New Atlantis is where Constellation's headquarters are located, so it is safe to assume that our journey starts there, or at least that we get to it rather early in the campaign. Sketches of urban environments we have seen are nothing short of amazing, and I have really high hopes that cities will not just be hubs where we go buy new stuff or talk to some NPCs just because we have the chance to, as it has unfortunately turned out to be in so many similar games. Speaking of NPCs, we have very little information regarding the role companions have in Starfield. We do know they are present thanks to traits being associated with them traveling around with us, but what part they'll have on the story, whether we could have the option of romancing some, or even harm or kill them remains to be seen. The only friend Bethesda has given us at least some small amount of detail is a robot named Vasco, which I do not think will be a viable option for any kind of romance. Vasco is going to help us by providing many useful informations during our travels, as well as by carrying around stuff for us, and by assisting with his limited arsenal for some basic defensive cover when the situation gets dicey. We definitely do not want to let Vasco get all the fun though, since dicey situations are exactly why we go around carrying many things that shoot bullets. No matter the digital setting where we get to do it, shooting stuff is always fun, and Starfield provides us plenty of things we can point our weapons at. The combat system can be broken down into 2 types of situations: fights on foot in our spacesuits, and fights in orbit with our spaceships. When it comes to defending our lives on foot, our opponents are prevalently other humans, machines that are bent on eliminating us, and alien life that might not take too kindly we set foot on their home planet. Action looks reasonably fast-paced, and the combat UI looks clean, but from what we've seen so far, I do not expect much innovation when it comes to gameplay mechanics. Other than crouching and trying to take enemies by surprise or sneak past them, it looks like the game wants us to blast things to bits using our vast assortment of guns, rifles, grenades, bigger guns, and bigger rifles. When it comes to moving around, the thrusters in our suit can help us jump over obstacles and surprise enemies from above. This opens up many different possibilities for tactical advantage. For example, we might want to jump on top of things to find cover, or charge towards opponents hoping to get the drop on them. As said before, encounters with bad guys are not limited to the ground. When we sit in the cockpit of our spaceship, it's time to put away our guns and start using some lasers. Dogfights appear to be at a slower pace than combat on foot, but not to the point of risk becoming boring. We can expect using lock-on systems to fire our weapons and control the ship to move everywhere we please. And although I cannot say much on the specifics, it seems following the old rule of keeping our enemies in front rather than in the back is still a solid tactic. From the footage, the ship's main interface appears to have indicators for things like lasers, missiles, hulls, shields, and gravitational boosters, which once again might not be anything revolutionary, but sometimes going for what works is the best choice. The final interesting point about combat is that it might not be the only solution we have to defeat our enemies. Todd Howard told us that in some situations it is going to be possible to dock enemy ships and disable their crew. He also specified that some quests we encounter in our journey will have us smuggle stuff across the galaxy, steal away ships from space stations, and so much more. As fun as all of that sounds, we cannot really lean into the space pirate career without first getting our hands on our very own spaceship. Putting together our perfect spacecraft requires a lot of resources and well-planned designs, to which we gain access via a modular system. Once more, there definitely seems to be no shortage of options in Starfield. Things like cockpit, thrusters, weapons, fuel tanks, name it and you'll most likely find something that suits your needs. Among the different choices given, we can also change colors on any single part of the ship we put together. So should you have ever dreamed of building a rainbow spaceship, know that your wish will be granted when the game releases. It goes without saying that different modules have different statistics. Heavier parts are going to make our ships bulkier and slower, but probably also more resistant to impacts, while lighter ships are faster and more nimble, but also more fragile. As it happens with many things in this game, how you build your ship is up to your preferred playstyle. Whether you want as much cargo space as you can, or perhaps a quick freighter to assault an enemy ship, the choice is yours. In addition to our space vessels, we can also build outposts on planets or moons that are suited for it. These modular structures are created in a similar manner to ships, and their function seems to revolve around optimizing the resources gathered on the area they are built upon. We also know that we can assign companions to make these places run better, but how exactly we're going to do that remains a mystery. Building spaceships and colonizing the galaxy is a dream when it comes to playing these types of games. But as I promised at the beginning of the video, we cannot end this preview without talking about the huge issue that could make the amazing features of Starfield just wasted potential. Games this big cannot be made without the use of procedurally generated content. No studio can take on that challenge, no matter how big. And modern games have implemented this kind of technology more and more over the years. For this reason, we know all too well that a system designed to make something feel bigger than ever can instead make them seem just limited and shallow. 100 star systems and over 1,000 between moons and planets sounds incredible, but if all there is on those planets is just endless wastelands of barren rock, alongside the occasional random outpost with its random NPC that has no dialogues, the risk of boredom waking us up from our dream is all too real. In order to keep our drive to explore alive, there need to be reasons for us to go out there, to keep pushing for the next star, the next system, the next discovery. I know it is easier said than done, but is Starfield going to be up to the challenge? Or is it going to crush under its own weight like many other space exploration games? Only time will provide an answer to these questions. I, for one, want to believe in this dream. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end of this preview. But before leaving, I have some questions for you. Do you think Bethesda is up to the challenge? Or will they fail trying to make a game too good to be true? I'll be happy to read your opinions in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. It would really help me in growing and producing more content. As always, thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.